Hello, my dear learners. You're most welcome. I'm teacher Lunya Agnes Okot, a teacher of English language and literature. This is Education Online. Today, we are continuing to look at creative writing. And this creative writing, I'm preparing you to write composition. This lesson is meant for Senior 3 and my dear Senior 4. Now, my dear Senior 3 and 4, previously I taught you about two types of composition, and I said clearly that there is what we call argumentative composition. We saw it. We even came and looked at what we call expository, which is related still to argumentative. Today we are going to see another type of composition, because if you don't know all these types, you will not be able to write a good composition. Even you will not be able to identify the type of composition from the question. And when you fail to identify, that is a clear indication that your composition will not be excellent, leaving alone other factors that makes a composition an excellent composition. So, today we are going to look at the type which is called imaginative composition. Write it with me. It is spelled as I M A G I N A T I V E. Imaginative. This word imaginative is from the word images or imagine, to imagine something or images. Now, at the beginning, when we were looking at the definition or concept of composition, I stated clearly that composition are just created stories from the senses, the five senses of human being. We say that clearly, that the five senses are, one, the sight, which is developed from the eye, sight or vision. Then we also went on to say that you can create a composition by what you hear. So we said hearing is one of them. Hearing is written with H, H-E-A R-I-N-G, hearing, which is attached to our ears. Then I also told you that compositions are created, especially this imaginative. They are created, these stories are created from the part of the body, which is the limbs. The limbs. Now, when you're narrating or when you're imagining a story, but you want to attach it to the limbs, and our limbs are the legs. Therefore, there is what we call movement. Movement is part of the senses that we have. Movement. It is attached to limbs. Apart from movement, we also have our tongue, which will produce the sense, or the sense is called taste. So you can write there tongue, sense of taste, and it is related to the tongue. Sense of taste. Taste is written as T-A-S-T-E, taste. We did not stop there. I want to show you so that next time you don't suffer when you are writing imaginative composition. Our skin is another organ which will help us to write the composition very well, this type of composition especially. The skin produces the sense called, or mental image called, touch. So you write here touch. Some people call it tactile. 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 So this touch is for the skin. These five are related always and is generated from the brain. And our brain produces big one. This big sense in the brain is called mental or cognitive. Cognitive is spelled as Cognitive. Cognitive or mental image. Mental image. Now, my dear learners, without the brain, you cannot think of a story and begin to write. For instance, if the question says, imagine you had a very horrible dream. Write a composition to describe your dream. Now you're writing imaginative composition. Therefore, you have to use the sense in your brain to create all these senses. All this one. You imagine you saw something in the dream. Now you'll be using sight. If you imagine you were running in the dream, it is under movement, which is the limbs. If you imagine you ate some food in the dream, or you were seated somewhere in a very expensive restaurant and you are eating, not the dream, but just imagining it, then you're using the sense of taste and the tongue is involved. Now, if the question says, imagine you were invited for the birthday party of the president's daughter. So you have to imagine, don't say, I am not even related to the president. How can I be invited? So here is all about creativity, my dear learners. That's why I said creativity is paramount when it comes to this type of writing. It is called creative writing, not for nothing, to make you think of stories. Now here you have the liberty to assume any position and create a story. For instance, you can imagine that you're a girl when you are a boy. You can imagine that you're a woman, yet you are a girl. You can imagine that you're a girl, yet you're an old woman like me. You can imagine that you are the chief of a clan, yet you are not. You're just a subject of the chief. You can even imagine to be one of the ministers. Therefore, you have to create the story. Here, I want to appeal to our teachers out there. Please guide these learners well. Avoid being rigid. In most cases, you keep punishing them. When they create a story, you tell them, write a story about your life. Then when the student begin to write that I was born in California, I grew up in San Diego. From there, I went to a school in Boston. Then you begin to say, but you are from Jonglei here. Why are you talking about San Diego, California? That is being rigid, my dear teachers. Please don't limit the creativity of our learners. If the learner wants to say, I was born in the palace and I am a royal being, don't say, but I know your father. You're from Magui here. You're just from Yambio. No. In composition, I may not say that we don't talk of real things, but we talk of something beyond real. So this is what we call creativity. Let the student be creative. Don't limit their mental images. That is what I can also tell you, my dear learners. You are free to create a story, so long as you are following the type of that story. For instance, if they ask you, write a story when you were ambushed on your way to Congo or to Uganda, don't say, but I was born in a wheel and I even don't know Juba. Now how can you ask me to write a story when I was going to Congo? No, just be creative. and create a story which is related to that. Assume you went there. You can even assume you're the president of this country. And don't tell me, but I am still in senior 4 or I am still in senior 3. No. That means you lack creativity. So be very creative here. Develop the story using these senses. And the master of all these senses is the cognitive sense, which is developed from the brain. The mental image will produce all this. So imaginative composition is not only written about dreams, it's also written about parties, journeys. You can even write about your real life experience, by the way. You can even write something which is not real. My dear learners, there was a student who wrote about Christianity. She assumed she was a Christian and she wrote about Christianity, explained how she went for a very luxurious wedding in the church, but she was the daughter of a Muslim cleric. Later, the teachers, because most of them were Muslim, they expelled the girl because of rigidity. Please don't be rigid, my dear teachers, and let the student think of any story. That does not remove her from being a Muslim. She will still remain a Muslim. That student will still remain a Christian even when she writes about Muslim activities. Even a girl can write assuming the position of a boy. That does not mean the girl has changed her gender. Even a boy can write as a woman. Just for creativity, you assume. So be very careful here and be creative, please. Now let us look at some of the questions. So still you will write question approach to imaginative composition. This imaginative composition here. How do you approach the question, and how does the question look like in this case? So imaginative composition. All these composition, they have their own way of approach. Just like expository and argumentative have their own way, even imaginative, just like when we go to look at descriptive and narrative next time, we will see how the questions there are approached. Let us see the sample questions. 1. In not, or you can even say in about. Let us not restrict it. In about 250 to 300 words. Write a composition. Write a story or a composition, if you wish, a story about the most delicious meal. The most delicious meal you have ever eaten. Right. Assume this is the question. Now we are saying this time you will use creativity. You don't need to define the key terms here. And you don't use discursive mode. Here you use narration or narrative mode. You have to narrate a story. This one is a story. It's no longer a discursive, or it is no longer an essay like argumentative, or expository. Right. Here, let us still go back to creativity. Here, the meal in this case, you can even underline it, the meal here, this delicious meal, can have greater meaning. Therefore, it means you should attach it to multiple meanings. It may be real food, it may be something else, but you will attach it into meal. It can have the contextual meaning and the direct meaning or the dictionary meaning. Now, here, you can write the word meal in your plan, meal, then you attach it to food. You can attach it to situation. So you see? So meal may not only be ordinary meal, but can also be a situation. In other words, we call it wider interpretation. In composition writing or in English language, we say, give meal, this meal here, a wider interpretation. Wider interpretation. A wider interpretation. Meaning, don't glue yourself to this meal you eat, like maybe posho, beans, meat, kisira, walwal, a cope, and the like. But you can go beyond that. Now, let me give you another experience. When I was working as a senior examiner, we met a question which was similar to this. One student wrote it in this way. Okay, the other student, first of all, let me not go to that one student yet. The other student wrote it in this ordinary meal. Many students, they wrote it. They said, I ate rice, I ate banana, I ate cakes, it was very enjoyable, it was bush meat, this and this chicken, which was correct. They were right, and they got their marks. But one brilliant student, I call him brilliant because of creativity, very brilliant student, he wrote about sexual encounter, and he said that was the day he broke his virginity, and he explained all the situation. He was the best. He got a distinction because to him meal was not this rice, chicken, and fish, but to him it was sexual intercourse. Although many examiners would blame this boy for being out of morality, but what I can tell you, my dear teachers out there, or even my dear students out there, we are not teachers of morality. For us, we look at the linguistic aspect of your work. So our major idea here is the linguistic ability. Are you able to write that meal or that situation of having sexual intercourse in correct English? If yes, what about your spelling? Do you have correct spelling? Even if you write this real food, but you don't have correct tenses, no correct spelling, poor punctuation, still you will get very little marks. So the truth is, we may also teach you about morality, but still, we should teach you creativity. So be very creative here. Then another question was like, describe the most destructive win or the most destructive situation in your life. Many people describe rain, heavy rain, this and that, but other students who are very brilliant, they were creative enough to write about bad situation that happened to them. Others wrote about war, how they lost their parents, how they drop out of school, how they join bad peer groups. So they became the best because of creativity. So you have to create still. Here you have to create. Now here, you write in paragraph but without paragraph connectors. Don't come and say, furthermore is the hotel which I went to. Secondly, I drank wine. Thirdly, I ate rice. No, don't write like that. Just write in paragraph but tell a story, narrate. Use narration, don't use discursive mode. And don't define key terms. If at all you want to define it, let it remain in your brain. Don't write the definition of the key term, unlike in the two types which we saw in the previous lesson. So this can be one of the imaginative composition. You might have not even eaten any delicious meal in your life, but still, because of creativity, write it. Write something. Then look at this question. Number 2. Imagine you are the new governor of your state. Write a composition. A composition just means story. Write a composition about your first experience. As the governor. Your first experience as the governor. Now here, my dear learners, still you need to create. Don't say, but at my age, who can elect me as the governor of my state? Don't even tell me I'm still in senior 4. So I'm not the governor and I will never be the governor. Please, create a story. Assume, imagine, put yourself in the shoes of that new governor and write something. It may go beyond real. That's why we call it imaginative composition. That is the only way you can write an imaginative composition, if you use all these senses. And being engineered from your brain, the mental or cognitive image will help you to summarize it. Let us look at another question, which may be the last or the second last. Number 3. In about 250 to 300 words, write a story ending, put dot or put dash. Write a story ending, I wish I knew is a lesson of a fool. I wish I knew is a lesson of a fool. Therefore, this one means you're going to create a story to show that at the beginning you were foolish. You did not follow certain norm, or you went the wrong way. But in the end, you fail to recover from that bad experience. So you can now write an end. I wish I knew is a lesson of a fool. My life is already ruined. Or I wish I knew is a lesson of a fool because my sister dropped out of school and she is now a nobody. She cannot be appointed in big government position because she is a school dropout. So I wish I knew is a lesson of a fool. But it must end with that phrase. I wish I knew is a lesson of a fool. I wish, ending, I wish I knew. lesson of a fool. Quote that phrase from I up to a lesson of a fool. Yeah, this is how you can create a story here. Don't say, but nothing bad has ever happened to me. Please create. Create something and develop a story. You can even see another question here, which is still about creativity. Number 4, sample question 4. We are still looking at the approach of imaginative composition. How do we write it? Do we still write it like argumentative? No. Do we write it like expository? No. Here we use creativity and mental images like the sight, hearing, movement, taste, and touch. So that is what we're looking at. So our sample question 4 is in this way. Write a story beginning. This time beginning, not ending. Number 3 was, sample number 3 was, write a story ending. I wish I knew it's a lesson of a fool. This time, write a story beginning. Begin the quotation here. He slapped me. Slapped, you double the P. S-L-A-P-P-E-D. He slapped me on the face. With a suspension letter. Now you can put dots and close the quotation. Right. Now in this case, please put yourself in a situation whereby you were asked to leave the school temporarily or suspended over something. Don't say, but I've never been suspended from school. No, create a story. Think of a situation whereby you were caught on the wrong or red-handed doing something against a school rule or even at the workplace. You can even assume you are an employee of an organization, but this suspension was given to you by your superior or the manager, the director. So you can create a story under this one. This is how we write imaginative composition. So my dear learners, I think up to this level, you have now got the whole concept of how to write imaginative composition. I said 1, imaginative composition is a type of composition or story which are created from the senses. Our senses is generated from the brain, which we call cognitive or mental image. Now the mental image or the brain should produce all these 5 senses. The first one is sight, which we use our eyes to see. We use also hearing. We use our ears to hear. That is the sense of hearing. Then I also told you that movement is another sense, which is generated from the limbs or the legs, for that matter. And our number 4 was taste. Taste is a sense which we detect using the body part called the tongue. Now we have what we call touch or tactile. Touch or tactile. This tactile is related to the skin, the feeling is what we call the touch. It is generated from our brain. Then I went on to show you the approach of these imaginative composition questions. So if you see any question similar to this type, it can be imaginative in nature or a narrative, but in most cases it is imaginative composition. So please approach it in this way. Don't define keywords. just go straight and begin narrating the story. But you should write the draft of the story in a short form. This way you would have written a very good imaginative composition. I wish you well if you see this type of question in any paper or at school level. God bless you. I am Teacher Lunya Agnes Scott. Bye-bye for today.